there's a lot of discussion in our culture today about gender roles and what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. And so we want to talk about that and explore that a little bit today. And so I've got in studio with me Dr. David Johnson. He's a Christian clinical psychologist. And so you must see in your clients a lot of maybe expectations about what masculinity is really supposed to be. What is our culture telling us about that?
Yeah. So we come from a John Wayne era, right? We've got, I work here close to Hill Air Force Base, and there's a lot of men in the military, and thank God for their service and for their devotion. And yet there is a box that men are asked to fit into, and we get socialized into it as a kid, right? We're told like, okay, man up, suck it up, or don't act like a girl. And those all have implications for our later behaviors in life. So some of those things that we're taught, certainly don't show emotion.
Right.
And if it's going to be emotion, make it anger.
Right. It's got to be a tough guy emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
None of this sadness, none of this fear stuff. That's for girls.
That's weak.
Yeah, exactly. So don't show that. Certainly, always be the aggressor. Always be competing with people. Be bigger. Be stronger. Be winning. And don't admit to any kind of weakness. Don't admit to any kind of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And lastly, having to do with sex, you got to be a player. You got to be hypersexual. You got to be knocking off girls left
stallion,
and right. Yeah. And certainly, don't do anything that would make people think you're gay, and hate on gay people, because that's manly. It's manly to not like gays, so they don't mix you up with those gay men over there.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. That you can really see that in the messages that people are getting. Now, our society has perpetuated that there's got to be some reasons why. I mean, what are some of the positive elements of that masculine expectation?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think they came about for valid reasons. You even think about the pioneers days, right? Like here we are in Utah, and we got people coming across, and they had to go through a lot of hard things to get here. So you got to be a little emotionally resilient to get through that. And you got to be strong, and you gotta. Sometimes you don't have time to grieve, and even perhaps if you're at war, you don't have time to grieve your buddy that just died. You have a mission, and so. Thank God for those traditional men that can set aside emotions when the mission is calling, and really step in the line of fire and develop courage. They're not ruled by fear. And at times we need aggressors in this world. We need people to stand up to Hitlers and Stalins.
Right, injustice or whatever, That's
right.
Yeah. So we need that kind of strength. So that makes sense about where that has kind of come from in our culture. But there's obviously a downside too. So what's the dark side of that cultural expectation?
Yeah, that's right. So you can't ignore statistics. And when you look at 85% or more of sexual assaults, domestic violence, physical assaults, childhood sexual abuse, murder are all perpetrated by men. So we have to deal with, there's something going on as a man and as what we're taught that's causing chaos in other people's lives, damage beyond belief. But not only their lives, in our own lives. So a study in 2010 said that 1/3 of men are lonely. That's up from 1/5 of men 10 years ago.
Okay, wow.
So we're heading in the wrong direction in terms of connection. And so the dark side, if I'm not going to be emotional, if I'm not going to be vulnerable, well, I'm pretty much going to be a lone island. I don't get to connect with anybody because I don't want to be honest with how I'm really doing. So it leads to men, I think, being really lonely. And the problem with that is that same study showed that loneliness, chronic loneliness, is the same as a risk factor of smoking for things like cardiac disease, stroke, and Alzheimer's. So
there's a lot of
you're
risk there,
equally bad off being lonely as if you had been smoking your whole life.
Right. Well, let's evaluate this a little bit from a biblical perspective. How does the Bible address this question of masculinity and maybe speak to some of these stereotypes?
Well, I think about Jesus and a good example of a man, right? The best we've got. And, I think Jesus called out sin all the time, right? So he
and he went into the temple and he's overturning, kind of a display of
righteous anger.
Righteous anger,
Yeah,
right? Aggression in a sense.
Yeah, and he's targeting people who are taking advantage of other people. So man, we've got a great example of someone who's using anger in the right way. Just a quick story on this note. So I was just at the movies with my wife, went on a date. I go in the men's bathroom, and as I walk in, I hear these guys talking at the sink, and they're saying, "Can you believe that guy? He came and he peed in the urinal right next to me." And I just walked past and I said, "Dude, don't be so homophobic. Just relax." And I think we're as Christians, we're called to name sin, and when people are oppressing other people and hating on certain men, I think we got to name that.
Yeah, fair enough.
So we got to call it out. I think also Jesus showed us that he wept. When Lazarus, his friend, died, he wasn't afraid to share his feelings.
Right. His emotional range was not limited to anger and aggression, right?
That's right. The softer side, the vulnerable side.
Right, the vulnerable side.
That he really hurts. And lastly, too, I think Jesus gave us a great example to say, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
Okay, so that competition motif that so many men jump in on.
Yeah, let's keep it on the football field. I like my football too.
Yeah, there's a place for competition.
Yeah,
right?
but not in our day-to-day lives. I think we need to be lifting each other up. We need to, the Scripture says to spur each other on. I don't think that means by tearing each other down. It means lifting each other up, helping each other, and certainly, things like washing feet. Like, what's less manly in our culture? But Jesus did it, why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we lower ourselves and serve each other?
Right, that's a great point. It's a different kind of strength, it seems like, right? That our culture hasn't recognized among men. So, guys, if you're watching this, I hope this is some great food for thought about what really constitutes masculinity. Women, maybe you'll help you understand as well. There's some questions below that we hope you'll have a conversation with someone in your life about this topic, and hope it's been helpful to you. Thanks for watching today.